Welcome our moderator of this panel, the Chief Operating Officer at PAVI Green Renewable Energy Incorporated, Mr. Robert Marlon T. Pereja. Joining Mr. Pereja are our panelists for today. We have the Managing Director and Deputy Global Head for Energy, Renewables, and Infrastructure at DBS Bank, Kelvin Wong. Country Manager, Philippines in Vector Renewables, Gregory Lofamia. And Founder and President of One Renewable Energy Enterprise Incorporated, Ariel Narida. So if you could also give our panelists a round of applause.
Good morning. I hope everybody got their coffee. We started late, but we promised that for this panel, we will make it your weight. Okay. So again, to my distinguished panelists, good morning. Okay. So, about increasing and growing the solar installations in the Philippines, and how to continuously grow it. Okay, maybe let's start with the first question. The foreign companies are now allowed to own 100% of renewable energy power plants, and local players, particularly in terms of financing, are encountering high interest rates. So is the addition of foreign equity really the answer to grow this solar energy market? Or is it another solution required? So to the panelists, please.
Yeah, I can start first, Robert, since I'm the only foreigner here. So I think at DBS Bank, we look at many renewable energy developments and developers and lenders across our footprint from UK to Australia. Being Asian focused, obviously, Southeast Asia is a big part of what we look at. And I can only say that if you look at experiences from, say, Australia and Japan, which are quite developed in terms of solar development, you actually do see, despite many strong local companies, foreign players, right? And even in Europe, where the renewable energy market has been in existence for more than 20 years, you actually see quite a few inter-country kind of investments, as well as, say, American kind of infrastructure funds, kind of taking more and more early-stage development risks in these countries. So what am I trying to say? I think that when a market is efficient, you actually do get attractive foreign capital flowing into the sector. So take Japan solar as an example. In the early days, the Japanese, particularly the trading houses and even the utility companies, feel that these renewable energy things are too small, too unattractive, uneconomical, and then foreigners actually take huge swaths of land and then they kind of do the development. One famous company is called Equis, and then they kind of sold to GIT a few years ago, and in what was and still is the largest M&A in the renewable space in APAC to date. Despite that, continually, right, you see many companies going to Japan even until today, right? I mean, Japan is a land where it's known to have very low cost of capital, and then the Japanese companies themselves have got many times best practices and so on. So similarly here in the Philippines, I believe that based on what the Secretary just said just now, with the various programs for the GIAP to the NPS and the RPS and so on and so forth, I think the regulatory framework is attractive to foreign investors, and they will bring their own kind of expertise and cost of capital and funding sources alongside them as well. But I think the Filipino kind of banking market is very liquid in supporting renewable development, and so I think the Philippine banks will still play a major role in terms of financing of these projects from a debt financing point of view. From an equity point of view, you may see a lot more competition from the foreigners.
Okay. Thanks, Kelvin. How about Erel or Greg?
Okay, so yeah, basically allowing foreign companies to own 100%. This could potentially drive the growth in the industry in number of ways. First, the foreign companies may bring additional capital and resources to invest in the new RE projects and existing infrastructure and develop new technologies. This infusion of capital will help accelerate the growth in the industry and make it more competitive. Second, the foreign companies may also bring them new ideas and approaches to doing business and could improve efficiency and effectiveness of the industry. Finally, foreign company to own 100% of RE sector also help attract more investment to the country, and this could help create jobs, stimulate economic growth, and improve overall competitiveness.
Erel?
Yeah, bringing actually the foreign capital here would really boost the industry because as Ampli pointed out by Kelvin, we've been here since the enactment of 2018, 2008, right? So our growth is really, I would say, slow. So that one of the key factors, of course, the government now are doing a lot of this opening the market, GIA, foreign ownership, and all of that. That would really stimulate the market. But even if the market is stimulated, I mean, in a way, if you don't have sufficient capital, because the way from my impression is that internally generated capital is not actually enough for the target of renewable for the next 5 years. We're looking at around 11 gigawatts. So where will you get that money? Just in context, everybody knows this in context. Probably you're spending like 40 billion per gigawatt. So where do you get that money? So you need foreign infusion for that.
Okay. And Kelvin mentioned that as far as the GAP is concerned, from the foreigner's point of view, it is still an attractive market. Now, for the local guys like Erel, who has been developing in off-grid areas and has been an experienced EPC here in the Philippines, and Greg, who is also a pioneer of the solar industry here in the Philippines. And actually, I am privileged to have worked with Greg in 2016. What's your take, guys, from the local point of view about the attractiveness of this market?
Well, my preferential development is actually an off-grid, which I've been tagged on that most of the time. Our company has been tagged on that most of the time. And one of the things that we're looking at is mentioned a while ago also by the DOE representative about energy storage. Yeah, so the other day we had also like this discussion about energy storage as a solution. Can we actually go 100% transition using energy storage? I would say for big generation that would not still be forthcoming. But what is more reality now is we could easily transition into 100% renewable in off-grid areas. Just to cite the point, if you're looking at the true cost of generations in 2021 alone, it ranges from 16 to 179 per kilowatt hour, depending on what island you're looking at. We've been tracking actually the true cost of generation in one of the islands that we have electrified. It only averages at around 20 pesos. That's the true cost of generation for solar. That's inclusive of battery. So if you're saying that you're scaling up investment and talking also in relation to the energy storage, probably this time there should be more investment also on the off-grid areas because it's already financially viable. in our tracking, the true cost of generation for solar, for diesel is actually 50 pesos compared to 20 pesos unsubsidized. But the recent publications on the SHER, it's only like 6 pesos or 7 pesos per kilowatt hour. So what does that mean? It meant that if you want to invest on these islands, the benefit for the government is they'll be spending less in subsidy. Because if you're comparing it by 20 pesos against 50 pesos versus the 6 pesos or 7 pesos that's the subsidized rate, the government will save less and probably rechannel it to other developments as well in RE. So I guess that's how I would say, while everybody is really like looking at this huge facility all over the place, solar, biomass, wind, because it's a big generation. But the bigger that we develop this kind of development in main islands, the further that we cannot no longer serve the 2,129 islands that's currently either underserved or unserved.
Okay, thank you, Errol. Now that's for off-grid.
Yes.
But Greg, what's your take about the gear prices from GF1 and GF2? From a local standpoint, because from a foreign standpoint, Kelvin mentioned, it is still attractive for foreigners. But for you, as a local, what's your take on this?
Okay, so with respect to the GF1 and GF2, it's basically if you compare the two, for example, if you will take the solar rates, the GF1 is much lower than the GF2. And at the same time on GF2, we have already the rates for the ground mounted, the rates for the roof mounted, and also the floating solar. While on the other hand, on the wind side, the GF1 is much more lower. It's the other way around, much higher, while the GF2 on the wind is much more lower. So basically that entails on the wind development side, while on the solar side, given the much higher rate as compared to GF1, it will attract more foreign investors to come in. But at the same time, I checked some of the analysis of the LCOE conducted by one of the finance advisor called Lazard. Based on the initial analysis on 2023, the LCOE ranges from $61 per megawatt hour up to $131 dollar per megawatt hour. So if we translate this into rates, into Philippine peso, this will come up around 6 to 7.20. While on the other hand, while the ERC is conducting a public consultation, so they are doing Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Mindanao was conducted yesterday. Also, the PSSEA has also submitted its comment based on its study or analysis. The rate for the floating solar is around 7.2 or 7 point. So, meaning to say, if the ERC will be collecting all of these comments, and let's hope that the ERC may adopt or may add on the GF2 gear rate, so that it will be more attractive for solar developer or RE developer. It's perfect.
Okay, thank you, Greg. And Errol and Greg actually mentioned about energy storage being the future. While it is very obvious in off-grid islands because of the high true cost of generation from diesel power plants, in the on-grid areas and in recent publications, there were really large bids and offers for an RE base load, RE mid-merit and RE base load at really, really low prices. Now, gentlemen, what's your take on RE base load? Is it something really feasible at those levels for an on-grid situation or scenario?
Okay, allow me to make a start on that one. A while ago, I mentioned that, when we presented this energy storage solution for on-grid,
Yeah.
like you're talking about like gigawatt of battery, right? That's actually the only thing that would really be the challenge there is the cost. The cost is really, really staggering. It can be done, but who would like to invest in that, right? Like the whole, because if you have to integrate battery storage with renewable energy to address, of course, the intermittency of that, right? So you can have a base load, but what's the cost? I mean, like, well, somebody said that they can bring in it low. I'm not even sure if I've seen something like that on the ground right now. Aside probably from in Australia, in Adelaide, where Tesla put a large battery storage. I don't know what's the cost, but I'm not really familiar with the cost of that cost of generation for them. But it can be done.
Okay, thanks, Arel. How about Kelvin? What's your take, being from a foreigner standpoint and being exposed to other markets? Now, is there really an RE base load that can give low rates for an on-grid application?
I think the truth is that the cost of batteries are still very high, right? BESS systems, and it's not only a situation here in the Philippines. I mean, you mentioned Australia and so on. Even in Australia, while everybody's talking about hybrid projects, so we closed the financing of a solar plus hybrid plus battery hybrid kind of last year. Cost of financing is still, I mean, not cost of financing, the cost of electricity is still relatively high compared to just a standalone kind of solar plants, right? In Australia, of course, people can play the arbitrage game because of interstate issues and things like that. What's more feasible that we have also seen in Australia is the BESS systems being actually used by the grid operator or the gentailers for other ancillary services kind of usage, and those are typically done on a tolling basis. So purely on a kind of a commercial basis, in the sense of a hybrid project, I think the economics are still not very attractive at this stage, not just for the Philippines, but just throughout.
And Greg?
Hello. Yeah. So yeah, basically, in addition to the study on the Lazard, is basically if you are checking on the LCOE on a large scale in tandem with a battery energy storage, without the subsidy, the rate is 6 pesos. While if you will be competing on the base load, using this, the government should at least subsidize with this kind of hybrid system in order to compete and stay in the market, basically, to be a base load at the same time. But without the government subsidy, using the base load plant, using RE, it cannot be done. Technically, it can be done, but on the commercial side, need the support of the government.
Okay. And in your opinion and really rough calculation, what is the reasonable rate, if it can be done, just a ballpark figure, what is the peso per kilowatt hour really for an RE base load application? Just top of your mind. LCOE, even an LCOE.
Oh yeah, for the LCOE in a hybrid system, maybe around 3 point something. On the Western spot market, it ranges from 3 to 4. So basically, that's the target, at least 3, within 3 pesos, not more than 4, of course.
3 pesos, hybrid, solar with battery.
Yes, but it's, again,
Wow.
it's supposed to be subsidized or at least supported by the government.
Unsubsidized. Unsubsidized.
So unsubsidized is around 6 pesos. You cannot compete on the base load conventional power plant, actually.
From the experienced EPC standpoint?
Yeah, but I mentioned a while ago, like, this is actually 5 years tracking of true cost of hybrid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we segregated the cost for battery and solar and the cost for diesel. It's going to be like 20 pesos for this type of system. But we're talking of mini grid, right? Hybrid, right?
Yeah.
So it's small.
Yeah.
So probably you'll be looking at the numbers. If I would make a stat on that, probably it's like you're looking at the tens and
Yeah.
within that range. That would make it feasible already for large scale base load RE with battery storage. I mean, like,
Yeah.
just your guess is as good as mine. But that's the figure. The 20 is actually the actual figures already. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. Kelvin, how about in other markets? Is there something or an experience that you can share?
I think we've been looking at quite a few projects in the so-called energy exports into Singapore, which also requires this kind of base load concept, 75% plant load factor, which for renewables is really, really hard. The costs are definitely in the range of what he says. It's quite sensitive now, but it's definitely multiples of what is required today. So if the GAR is 4 point something pesos, I would say at least 2 to 2.5 times of that to kind of make it work.
So it's near the 10 peso per kilowatt hour estimate of Erel. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Now we're down to the last two questions before I open the floor to the audience to ask their own questions. Okay. I hope you don't find this too difficult. Okay. We want to grow this RE market. We want to grow solar. We want to grow storage. If you are given a chance to be DOE secretary, what reform will you do that will have the most impact to this industry and why? Maybe, Greg, would you like to start?
That's really a tough question. Anyway, let me put the break with this one. All our developers here, foreign and local, what's the common burning issue that we have right now? That why our development for RE, if I would call it stifled, why is it? What is that? What is that? It's not money, it's not technology. Solar, there's no additionality. Just solar is just solar. Put battery, then that's it. What is really the burning issue, and what reform is that? I mean, I would probably ask the audience for that because I think there's an elephant in the room and nobody would like to say it. If a reform would be something that we would be looking at, we should improve actually the reform on infrastructure. I guess everybody knows what I'm referring to because all developments are dependent on their power evacuation. So I think that's if I'm the DOE secretary, it's the first thing that I would look into because that's that's the linchpin right now of the development. So I don't want to put myself on the spot, but that would be so but that's actually the thing probably a reform that I'll be looking at.
Yeah.
I know there's so many factors that comes with that, but that will be something that that we'll probably be positively working forward to. Because no amount of developments that you put in renewable right now, if you can evacuate the power and put it in the infrastructure, doesn't mean nothing, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, Kelvin, Greg, would you like to add something?
Okay, so if given a chance to be Secretary of the Department of Energy, so on the technical side, basically, I would like to enhance more the team of the Department of Energy to further study the grid at the same time on the load forecast, because there are sometimes we have a load forecast coming from electric cooperatives, distribution utility, and other distribution utility. Yes, we have, DOE have already the development plan, transmission development plan, but I would like to further enhance the team and be competitive in the study so the distribution, the power system industry in the Philippines, which much more be reliable and safe, and at the same time we can compete at least to lower also the cost of the rates in the Philippines using additional power plants and of course RE power plants.
Okay, great. Calvin?
I think it's somewhat related to what's been said just now about the grid infrastructure and so on, but also the associated land issues, because everybody's going for connection points that matter so they can evacuate your power. The land, the acquisition of the land and the whole process of land conversion, which takes a long time and very uncertain. I mean, if you ask me from a foreign investor's point of view, that's definitely, I mean, I've spoken to at least 3 potential investors in this country over the last 24 hours, the first issue that they just mentioned is land conversion, particularly around this grid connectivity issue. So I think that's, I mean, if we could convince, I mean, if there's something that can help, I think that's definitely one of them.
Great, great. And of course, it's not complete because the DOE is just one part of the equation. There is also the ERC. Now, gentlemen, and I know that one of you used to be with the ERC. So, if you were ERC chair, what is the most impactful reform that you can think of to speed up the development of solar energy and RE in this country?
Basically, you're preparing to me. Okay. So basically, I'm a former ERC engineers. For 15 years, I was in the ERC. During my stay there, I was part of the meter division, standard compliance monitoring division, and under regulatory operation service. The ROS is the services that conducted evaluation of the electricity rates in the Philippines. Also include the ancillary service, NGCP tariff rates, all of the rates under the ROS. And then we have also MOS. MOS, the Market Operation Service, wherein they are the one who are handling the generation company. So why I'm telling this? Because I've been part of the ERC. We are doing great work. We are doing public consultation, especially on the rates. And we are getting all the comments. There's sometimes an oppositors for the rates, and we are the one evaluating the rates. So what we do is we only approve what is reasonable, what is good for the consumers, and what is fair return to the investors. So if I will given an ERC chairmanship, so I will focus on these two or these three: the rates, the market operation, and at the same time, the standard compliance. The standard compliance will take care of the transmission, capital expenditures, capital application, because this CAPEX will be form part of the rates in the ERC. And also, if in case, if I will be allowed as chairperson to reduce, I am talking with Robert earlier, he also mentioned that to reduce, number one, the permitting process for the RE developer. In this way, the RE or the foreign investor or other investor will come at least to fast track the implementation, installation, construction of the generation power plant, and thereby provide electricity and at least efficient public power service in the Philippines.
Yeah, I guess by default I will give that to you, the chairmanship. Yeah, okay. Anyway, from the user standpoint or like a developer or EPC standpoint, you'll be looking at actually basically on the rate, right? So a while ago you mentioned like the industry is saying like, hey, your rate is so low. So probably if some reform should be made, it should be like how do we benchmark the rates of renewable now in the current market, like across the globe. I mean, like you should not be looking only what's here. You should be looking beyond that. I'm not about to say what the ERC should be doing, but in as much as why do we have a different way of computing it? Why are you computing it at 4.7 or 4.7? I think is the floating, right? And the other party is saying like, why is it 720? And I think that was also confirmed a while ago by Kelvin, right? Why is that? There's a huge difference in terms of numbers, right? So what's the basis for that? I guess that's the thing that probably that we need to improve on.
Okay, Kelvin?
Nothing further to add.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Don't be shy, you can ask controversial questions. Okay, I guess there's a very big elephant in this room because nobody wants to dare ask questions. Well, as moderator, I'd like also to give a few cents about the things that I've asked the panelists and a feedback or a reaction of their answers. Well, what I've captured is that if we really want to grow this market, one is we need land, we need space to put our power plants, and we have to speed up the conversion from agriculture to industrial. In fact, if it's for power, it should have an expressway. It should not take too long. As long as there is proof that this is not used for the longest time for agriculture. You know, the problem is we get delayed because of claimants. If there are claimants, it's very easy to prove if the claimants are legit or not. If the claimants are not legit, then I guess we have to implement what is just right and what is reasonable, so as not to delay the process. Next, Erel mentioned about infrastructure. Infrastructure can affect the development because if the transmission lines are congested, you can't export anything, or if you can do, you get curtailed, and that's a problem. And that's not good for investors, and it slows down the development of this industry. Not to mention the long queue for you to even start the process of interconnection. I think that's for infrastructure. Now, regulatory-wise, if you become an embedded plant, then you have to deal with what we call wheeling charges. Okay, now, depends on the utility or the electric cooperative, the wheeling charges vary. And you'd be surprised that your usual double-digit internal rate of return can be a really mid-single digit because of wheeling charges if you are not careful. And you know, if we could change regulation to speed up the process, I could only think based on experience of a couple of things, right? One is the point-to-point application should be really streamlined. No, it should not take too long. You know, we understand that this is a democratic country, but this is for power infrastructure. And if the Philippines is really short on power supply, then we should help investors. You know, it's important, while it is important to hear out, you know, if, you know, one private landowner that has a tree that, you know, does not allow or restricts the construction of a transmission line. You know, we understand. Yeah, you don't want your tree to, you know, to be trimmed, right? But I think we need the support of government, you know, to help investors and to protect the money that is being put by investors, you know, to speed up the process of application. And then I think the last elephant in the room is rates, right? I don't know, but I think it is everybody's prayer that the secondary cap in WESM be removed so as to reflect the true cost of power in this market. So with that, you know, the ladies, the beautiful lady here is telling me time's up. So I wish everybody a really fruitful conference today, and I hope that this first panel has been enjoying and a worthwhile experience for you as much as it has been a pleasure for the panelists and myself. So again, thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you.